Are you searching for a deeper understanding of your faith?
Inspiring Philosophy is your go-to resource for exploring the rich tapestry of Christian thought.
From biblical archaeology to philosophy of mind, we dive into the topics that matter.
Our content bridges faith and understanding, offering insights into God's existence and the reliability of the New Testament.
Join a community where faith meets reason and discover the answers you've been seeking.
Inspiring Philosophy, where faith meets understanding. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone, back to the channel. I'm the most dishonest apologist ever out there. And here's my trusty sidekick. You all know him. His name is Than.
Liar.
Yeah, that's right.
Liar McLiar pants.
Right. Great to have you back that we all know so well. How you doing?
I'm good, man. My neck is sore.
How cold is it up there? And never mind, it's going to be nice and chill up there in Wisconsin. It is blistering hot here in Tucson, Arizona.
It's like 90 something, but super humid.
It's so hot when you're in the car with the air conditioning. You can feel the air get warmer before it hits your face. Like it's the window is like warming. The air conditioning comes out great, and then by the time it gets to your face, the heat from the sun has already warmed it up. It's horrible. So yeah, I'm having a horrible time.
I do. In Greece, it's like that in Greece.
Yeah, it's awful. People were asking, where's Redeem Zoomer? Where is he? I asked him to come on. Okay, listen, look. Okay, I asked him to come on, and he said he's traveling right now, and he said he'll think about it, but he never got back to me. So we know what is really going on. We know what you're doing, Redeem Zoomer. We know.
You're hiding, boy. You're hiding, and you know you can't come out and show your face.
So that's what's going on. We know Redeem Zoomer is hiding. Listen, I will drop the link for Redeem Zoomer on X, because that's where I messaged him. He wants to come in. He can come in here.
Matt has his cell phone or something, doesn't he? Matt,
text him.
want
Redeem Zoomer, Matt. All right. Well, if he wants to come in, he can, but he'll probably be on his phone. It'll be horrible quality. We won't have the glorious fan behind him that we all see. So we won't have any OnlyFans today. We'll actually have OnlyFans today, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Oh. You gotta deal with what you got, Mike.
Deal with what we got. This is all we got. That's pretty bad. Anyway, today we were figuring out what we were gonna do this week, and then luckily our good friend Genetically Modified Skeptic just happened to drop a video, which he changed the title of it. First, it was like Reasons to Leave Christianity, which is the most clickbait title ever. Because you click on it, and you're like, oh, I'm sure. What are we going to do? We go into the problem of evil, suffering, yada, 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 all this stuff. No, it's literally 0 reasons to leave Christianity. So I think he got enough comments about that. So he changed it to 3 reasons American Christianity is cooked. We're cooked, Than. It's over. It's over. Give up.
You see?
It's over. And so, well, we were already planning to respond to it, but I mean, like, because like there's a lot of issues there, but it's kind of a one-sided story, which you'll see when we get into it. So a lot of issues. It's all over the place. First of all, there's no reasons to leave Christianity in it, and then second of all, a lot of the issues he sort of implies or blames on Christianity are not really coming from Christianity by his own admission.
Yeah, I mean, He's basically, my understanding of that video, if you to actually take into account the nuance that he doesn't really deliver and the sources he uses don't deliver, it's basically just affirming what we've been saying this whole entire time. Separation of church and state. You don't want the religion of the state to become the state religion, and you don't want a theophany or anything like that. So even if we kind of just granted everything that he was saying, it's not a reason to leave Christianity. And I just want to give credit to where credit's due, because at the end of the video, he even says, like, this isn't a reason to leave Christianity. And he even explicitly says, I don't think you can blame Christianity for this either. I think he said that at the end. So credit where it's due. I respect that.
So the title of this is really in response to him. We're not going to argue American Christianity has zero problems or no problems. I will make the case, though, that it is not as bleak as a lot of people think it is. And there's actually a lot of really good stuff in American Christianity that is often overlooked or forgotten and not really talked about. So if you're sick and tired of hearing, oh, American Christianity is awful, it's causing all these horrible problems, I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing that. And yeah, there are problems. We got mega church pastors. We got the prosperity gospel. We got pastors who's engaged in PDF behavior that they should never have done. But people are saying they got the snake handlers. That's true. I mean, like there's a dime a dozen when it comes to problems, but it's also not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. And there's some good things, actually. There's some really, really good things to look at, and I think that we should have a little bit of optimism and positive. We should be positive about. So we'll talk about some of that as we go through this. Let me get to some of these initial super chats here. Andrew says the car was too hot because OnlyFans forgot to put his shirt back on. Stop taking your shirt off, Than. You're scaring the children.
Think of the children.
The children. And thank you, Livy, for becoming a channel member. So appreciate that. All right, let's get into that. If you guys want to put a super chat in, we will cover those throughout this stream. So get them in now, and we will be able to go through those in a little bit. We're supposed to, before we do that, we're supposed to talk about upcoming streams. Oh, yeah. So Wednesday on this channel, I believe at 4 p.m. Central, so that'd be 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be live on the channel with Dr. Dan Wallace, and we're going to be reviewing a video from Dan McClellan. It came out a while ago, but Dan Wallace is busy, so we're going to be reviewing his argument on textual criticism and manuscript traditions and all that kind of stuff, and looking at some of the stuff he has said. Dan Wallace is super excited, so that'll be live this Wednesday. And then Thursday, it's going to be you, me, and William Lane Craig.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to have Craig on 2 weeks in a row. This coming Thursday at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. ET. I don't remember at the top of my head. And the first one, we're going to go over his first volume of First Systematic Theology. And then the next week, it's going to be his second volume as well. So
excellent. Yeah. And then next,
you guys, it's Craig. It's going to be live. We'll take your super chats, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah. So super chats for Biblical Scholar Wednesday, and then for a philosopher / theologian / whatever apologist you want to call him, that'll be live also, or that'll be Thursday. And then next Monday, Stephen Boyce and I are going to be interviewing Thomas Schmidt on his new book on Josephus. And we're going to be talking about new evidence that supports the resurrection that he talks about in that book. So that's going to be exciting. And then also Than and I next week will probably be reviewing a video Muslim tried to reply to me on cousin marriage. And it is a disaster.
It is the first time hearing of that. And
it is hilarious. The video is basically like, the video is basically like, Islam is okay with cousin marriage, but also it was a socio-political, it was a cultural issue, but also it's good that it's halal, but also Muslims should stop. I mean, it was the dumbest reply I may have gotten in a long time. That's saying something. So yeah. Oh, by the way, channel I like to watch is in the chat, Mr. and Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim. Nice to see you guys. I do enjoy your content, actually. He's talking to someone else, but would you consider secularism a natural consequence or even feature of Christianity? I know this wasn't directed at us, but I want to answer it anyway. I would say depends on what you mean by secularism. Yes. There is a secular aspect of Christianity in that historians are pretty much unanimous on this, that Christianity did create the separation of church and state. And we see Augustine talking about the secular in his book, The City of God. It was never meant to be what modern secularism is. It was meant to be the sense that there is the church and then there is the secular governments. These are two different institutions that are supposed to work together, that kind of stuff, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I don't think modern secularism, as we understand it, is a natural consequence. I do think it is an offshoot of Christianity, taking a lot of the stuff they like out of Christianity and then trying to build a worldview without the foundations. And I just don't think it works. See my debate with Lawrence Krauss, for example.
Kavanaugh's book, The Myth of Religious Violence, covers that as well pretty deeply. And I think it's an important thing when you're trying to engage in sociology, politics, and religion.
Yeah, I need to get them on the channel eventually, because I like a lot of the stuff they put out. I think that's great. And again, I'm just so done with Islam and ready to go against that in so many ways. But yeah, I'll be maybe I can bring them on for like a debate review, because I have that debate coming out in 2 weeks. I'll think about that. I got to get all my thoughts organized on that. Brandon said, I'm not reading this one. You have to read it. I'm not doing it. Okay, let's move on. That was great. I have some bad news about RZ joining. Oh no!
RZ's
no, he's joined. He's joined a new religion, guys. It's over. We're cooked. We've lost the Redeem Zoomer. Redeem Zoomer, you need to get on this right now to clear up all this misconception. I don't know what you're doing. I've sent you the link to join on X. You guys need to go bother him and to ask him why he's not joining. He needs to clear up all this confusion. So I will save this for when he finally gets in here. In my opinion, when is this Myth Vision does his long videos based on the work of fringe scholars, he is just presenting another POV, or does he think it's a hard fact? Listen, here's where I will give Myth Vision credit. He does stuff that we would do, in that he's not just going to toe the line for the consensus. Like he's convinced by some of these things these fringe scholars say. Fine, he puts it out there. I think he's wrong in a lot of ways, but good on him for not being like, oh, I can't go against the consensus. The consensus said so. I must jump in line and do whatever the consensus says. Like, we did that on this channel recently when I argued the Pentateuch is ancient, like dating to it's pre-monarchic in a lot of ways, even though I would say it's been updated and supplemented. I think that it's have an historical basis going back to sometime in the period around 1200 to 1000 BC. That's fringe. I admit it's fringe. Very few scholars hold to it, but I was thoroughly convinced by a lot of the evidence that supports it and what some of the scholars like Sandra Richter were saying, for example. So yeah, fun stuff there. So yeah, I don't think he's presenting it as fact. I think he's presenting what he believes are interesting theories. Sometimes he is convinced, sometimes he's not, as he has said. So yeah,
his tone's changed over the time too. Like he's gone from really anti-Christian tonality to slowly but surely trying to become more balanced too, it seems like. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell where he's at right now.
Yeah. Yo, Mr. and Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim. I'm debating a Muslim on Rattlesnake TV. I think it's July 22nd in the morning. And I was thinking of doing a debate review that night. So if you guys are interested if you watch the debate in the morning and then you want to come on and talk about it, that'd be awesome to have you guys on. Because I'm excited. I found a bunch of studies I want to present on Islam, and I'm super excited about that debate. So I've been wanting to have it for a while. So yeah, it's finally happening. All right, let's get into this video. You ready for this thing? You ready to have your mind blown?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm ready to get triggered.
Better. You're gonna get so triggered. All right, let's dive in.
You read the title. Let's get into some inconvenient facts. Some of you are going to want to click away instead of learning this stuff.
Mike, click it off. Click it off, Mike. No, Mike, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm scared.
No, I'm scared. I'm scared, Than. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
I'm going to want to hear my final point, especially if you are a Christian. In fact, the end of this video might even make some atheists think twice. Fact 1, U.S. Christians are still colonizing and killing Africans in the name of Christendom. Christians have existed in Africa almost since the beginning of Christianity, but remained a small minority in most regions until European colonization. European powers brutally conquered most of Africa with guns and whips in one hand and a Bible in the other. They used violence to control African bodies and forced their own version of Christianity on Africans to control their minds. This was about extracting resources to enrich European leaders, not about saving souls. I mean, colonizers went after historically Christian parts of Africa just as they went after everywhere else. Although
Okay. Do you want to start, or I want to start? I made slides.
I did too. I'll say this really quickly if you want to go first. That last line he just said just kind of points to the equivocation and the issue with the presentation. In other words, like, in one breath, it's like Christians are colonizers, blah, 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 blah. But then all of a sudden, the colonialists are going after the Christian nations. There's so much nuance that's lost here. And this is one of those talking points that I just get really, really irritated with, because I have really close friends that are like missionaries and who live in some of these countries where a lot of this stuff is happening. And some of the stories I've heard from them personally, it just gets really irritating. So I've dug into the scholarship on this a little bit. And it's a really annoying piece of scholarship to get into as well, because it's very plagued by a lot of rhetoric from a lot of people. But I'll pause there if you want to go first, Mike.
Yeah, okay, so my biggest issue is this is just oversimplifying a very complicated mess of history. It's just like colonialists, Christians, and they went around with a Bible in one hand and a gun in the other hand. That's not the real history. If you actually look at a lot of the research that's been out there, missionaries were often pushing back on colonialists and their abuses. Robert Woodbury has published a ton on this. He wrote, this is a study I've cited before. Prophet of Zod tried to debunk that. We responded it on your old channel, Exploring Reality, and just showed he didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, that was a disaster. But anyway, oh my God. I know, it was bad. It was so bad.
I forgot about that.
Oh, I've never forgotten about it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, yeah, every time I think of Prophet of Zod, I think of the bad response to that. But anyway, he says conversionary Protestants heavily influenced the rise and spread of stable democracy around the world. It argues that CPs were a crucial catalyst initiating the development and spread of religious liberty, mass education, mass printing, newspapers, voluntary organizations, colonial reforms, thereby creating the conditions that made stable democracy more likely. To reach their religious goals, non-state missionaries punished abusive colonial officials and counterbalanced white settlers, which fostered the rule of law, encouraged less violent repression of anti-colonial political organization, and facilitated peaceful decolonization. CPs also dispersed power by publicizing colonial abuses, advocating for change in colonial policy, and transferring ideas, skills, and networks that help colonized people organize anti-colonial and naturalist movements. You know, one of the reasons we know about a lot of the colonial abuses that happened, it's because missionaries were telling everyone, hey guys, like these guys are doing horrible things. Should stop it. This idea that it's the colonialists and the missionaries were the same group, absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Missionaries spread SMO forms and tactics internationally. Early Protestant missionaries tried to reform what they considered abuses in other societies, like foot binding, female widow burning, and consummating marriage before the age of 12. In cross-national statistical analysis, Protestant missions are significantly and robustly associated with higher levels of printing, education, economic development, organizational, civil society, protection from private property, and rule of law with lower levels of corruption. Here's another study.
Do you want me to move the comments out of the way for the slides?
Are they blocking them?
Yeah.
All right, yeah, move them out of the way.
Sorry, keep going.
I like this study. Different authors, similar conclusions. Christian missionary activity is consistently associated with better female education outcomes as measured by differences in education between men and women in the colonial period. And it also continues to affect post-colonial variation in female education. These effects hold when we include the usual controls of direct British rule, modernization, European settlement, education expenditures, and post-colonial democracy. In other words, guys, it wasn't colonialism, British rule, modernization. those things were not actually helping advance education and helping the native people. It was missionaries directly. So we can actually draw a distinction between the missionary activity, people working directly from Christianity, and the colonialists, the people that were coming in and trying to reap and harvest the fruit of the land for their own effects, as well as those specifically employed in studies of India, such as Islam, caste and tribal society, and land tenure. Interestingly, we also find that direct British role is not consistently associated with better female education outcomes. Furthermore, it has had a how do you pronounce? I forget how to pronounce this word here.
Where's the word?
Deleterious effect on gender equality and post-colonial education at some level of schooling. Okay, another study. Again, different authors. Our investigations of historical facts and our empirical tests suggest that the greater Protestant presence results in better education and healthcare outcomes in 1920. And that these effects persisted in the present and contributed to economic growth in 2000. They're talking about China, by the way. And it's not just like this. I've cited so many different studies on this issue, how missionary activity was so good for places like Africa, China, the Americas, India. Like everywhere missionaries went, they increased education, health outcomes, you name it. Brought a lot of this up in my debate with Lawrence Krauss. So the idea that like missionaries were contributing to these colonial abuses is nonsense. When people started doing the work that Christ commanded, like doing the Great Commission, living out the gospel, things got better. When Europeans lived out colonialism, lived out things that were contrary to the gospel, things got worse. So we can see direct effects of Christianity in places like Africa. It's not as Drew, genetically modified skeptic, paints it, where it's Christianity does bad things. This is oversimplifying a complicated history. And when you actually look at the specifics, you see missionaries, people that are living out Christianity doing good, people that were fighting against Christianity doing bad. But go on, your turn.
Okay. I tried a new program called Prezi, I think it is. So sorry for everybody that doesn't like this new thing. I will not do this if people don't like it. Just a few things I wanted to put in. Oh gosh.
What's happening? Doing? What is going on?
Okay, I already don't like this. Mike, help. Hold on. Let me just start over. Maybe if I just... Okay. So I just kind of put the timestamp here, first fact and everything like that, right? As I always do. Mm-hmm. The first thing I do want to say is colonialism had horrible abuses, and those need to be condemned. Like you said, Mike, the story's not that simple.
Yeah.
First, he says that Christians have existed in Africa almost since the beginning of Christianity, but remained a small minority in most regions until the European colonization. It's not true. Elizabeth Saseki, in A History of Christianity in Africa, I'm not going to read the whole entire quote, but she points out, in the first Christian centuries, Northern Africa provided some of the keenest intellects and most influential apologists in Christendom. She goes on to explain what that is. And further down, the African Christianity of antiquity was largely but not wholly lost. The flourishing churches in North Africa and Nubia at different points in time gave way to Islam. Christianity in Egypt survived, though as the faith of a minority. And then she goes on and explains some things. So the history in Christianity is not up until the European colonization just a minority. It's got a complex history that's intertwined with Islam. In The Routledge Companion to Christianity in Africa, Franz Weischen points out something interesting as well. In general, there have been 3 periods in which Africa came into contact with Christianity. The first period was the Christianization of Egypt. The second period is the 15th and 16th century mission. And the third period is the 19th and 20th century mission, in which started with 2 European revolutions. Then he points out it was due to the 2 revolutions in Europe that the missionary societies became very active in the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution brought the financial means to practice mission, together with the ever-growing need to find raw materials and expand markets. And then he says the French Revolution brought the ideals of freedom, equality, and brotherhood, which motivated missionaries to fight slavery and to bring health and wealth to Africans. I'm adding an emphasis there for a particular reason, but before I explain that, I have to do something else, which is talk about what colonization means and all this stuff. Because he says that European powers colonized everybody and all this other stuff. Colonization, just briefly speaking, right? We should define it, it's referring to the process by which political power settles in and exerts control over another territory. It involves displacement, subjugation, resource extraction, cultural imposition, and most of the time it's going to be ideologically justified, whether it is religious or secular, even though I'm not a fan of that distinction here. So, did Christianity cause European colonialism? The answer is no. Rather, Christianity was often instrumentalized by empires. European colonialism in Africa ramped up after the Berlin Conference, with key powers motivated by industrial capitalism, nationalistic rivalries, and geopolitical advantages like controlling the Nile or trade routes. Again, Elizabeth points out that some missionaries did express some sort of that she points out that missionaries were part of the colonial presence and their motivations were distinct from them. No one became a missionary with the conscious intention of furthering imperialism, and often there were serious sources of friction between missionaries and colonial officials. Sometimes missionaries denounced various forms of oppression and injustice, and the representatives in the metropolis lobbied on humanitarian issues. Somebody might be like, well, they were still racist. Well, there was points in which we can actually identify some racism with the missionaries. However, this is a little bit nuanced. So, for instance, in 1887, a missionary in Uganda wrote, "I believe we shall gain a great point when Christianity ceases to be called the white man's religion. The foolish phrase, kusama kizungu, to read the English thing, creates needless suspicion. I am ever battling with it among our own people and trying to get them to use Soma Lugunda instead. When will they learn that Christianity is a cosmopolitan and not Anglican?" We also have John Colenso, who opposed the belief that non-Christians are doomed to hell, defended polygamists, and respected the positive qualities in a Nguni life. Van der Kemp married a Khoi wife and lived on the edge of destitution in the Eastern Cape until his death in 1811. The Norwegian Lutheran Hans Schroeder worked amongst the Zulu from the 1840s on his personal appearance is bad. His food was chiefly pumpkins, eggs, and milk. And just one more example here. The missionaries joined the African villages as well. Marvin D. Markowitz notes, they idealized African village life and rejected such aspects of modernity as urbanization and industrialization. To them, rural life was the epitome of virtue, while the city was filled with evil and atheism. So that objection's kind of faulty. He also... Now, I want to come back to this whole French Revolution thing, which brought the ideals of freedom and all this other stuff. The reason I'm zeroing in on this is because I think this is misguided and it's rooted in a misunderstanding of colonial justifications, thought processes, anthropology. And the basic idea is, I don't think it was the French Revolution that did this. I think it's actually the Enlightenment period that brought about a lot of the justification and rationale for imperialism. So many of the justifications you'll find for colonial expansion were secular and Enlightenment derived, not Christians. And the motivations were in virtue of nation-state ambitions. The missionaries were present during this colonial expansion, but the driving force of the European imperialism was scientific racism, resource extraction, nationalist rivalry, like I said, and not the gospel. William Cavanaugh argues that it is a myth that religion is the primary motivator of violence. It's the secular states that have deployed religious imagery to justify fundamentally political and economic aims. And he concludes this book by saying, we must conclude that the myth of the wars of religion is financially incredible, which is to say false. And then he lists on a lot of criteria that he goes over.
But Than, I was told the Enlightenment saved us from the shackles of religion and brought us into a more egalitarian age.
Just you wait, because it gets bad. I think this is part of the things that people don't realize.
This book,
Jonathan Israel is a historian who specializes in the Enlightenment and points out that there's two actual thoughts in Enlightenment. He points out that there's the radical Enlightenment, and about this he writes, beyond certain level, there were and could be only two enlightenments: moderate to substance enlightenment, on the other hand, postulating a balance between reason and tradition, and the other is radical enlightenment, conflating body and mind into one, reducing God and nature into the same thing. Spirit separates from bodies, invoking reason as sole guide of human life. This is important to bring up because there's two sides to this. However, he continues. There was a closely allied variant to the latter, also part of the radical enlightenment in the shape of philosophical Unitarianism, almost relentless, proclaiming reason's sole guide. The essence of the radical enlightenment, both in its atheist and Christian Unitarian modes, was the reason and law founded on reason. The point here is that both sides actually included religious ideas and were born out of them. And he makes it very clear that a lot of these Enlightenment values, such as human rights, democratic equality, and personal liberty, were initially grounded in theological traditions. In another book, he writes, "For it is apparent that the Enlightenment progress could take specifically Christian, deist, or atheistic forms." In other words, it's not this secular atheist thing that gave way to all of these ideas. It's actually the fact that when these things became divorced from Christianity, it was the problem. We've talked about Tom Holland a lot, and I've been talking for a while, so I'm not going to read this. But again, just this is multiple historians talking about this. Larry Seidentop, if you guys have ever heard of him, in his claim and his work, Democracy in Europe, writes, "The Christian conception of God became the means of creating brotherhood of man, of bringing self-consciousness to human species by leading each of its members to see him, herself, as having at least potentially a relationship with the deepest reality, vis-a-vis God, that both required and justified the equal moral standing of all humans." And he builds on this in the later volume. This was the revolutionary promise of Christian beliefs. It was hardly too much to claim that this framework of ideas provided the original constitution of Europe. In other words, he's saying in its basic assumptions, liberal thought is the offspring of Christianity.
Yeah. It's an offshoot in that it like tries to take away the foundations. It takes the things it likes from Christianity and tries to build a worldview around it. But the problem is that it's not successful for many, many reasons. And it can lead to many of the problems that it blames on Christianity, like this radical colonialism that came out of it, with oppressing other groups that they were considered to be like less than human than like the white man. This is where we get the white man's burden from. It's our job, according to some enlightened thinkers, to go around and raise these people up through force and colonialism and oppression. And it was really a nightmare in a lot of ways. And who was pushing back on a lot of this stuff? It was Christians arguing from Adamic unity. We're all descendants of Adam. We're all brothers and sisters. We should treat each other equal. You're not greater than these other people because you have a different skin color. So, Hume and Voltaire are profiting off the slave trade. It was Christian missionaries arguing we should get rid of the slave trade.
Yep. And so I'll just go fast through these. I mean, Voltaire supported the slave trade. He put it, "The black race is a species of man different from ours." He argued that people from different races are ordered in hierarchy. They're as superior to Negroes, just like Negroes are superior to monkeys.
Well, let's not substitute that word.
Sorry. I'm reading. You get the point. If you want to read more on this, by the way, this paper that I have over here is a good thing to read. We got Baron Montesique. Again, he is a tough nut to crack, but the basic idea is like he argues that we're all created equally. But then this is really interesting because he still says it could be justified. Slavery could still be justified because some countries have people where heat makes people lazy, blah, 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 blah. But I cut off this quote early because he ends it by saying Christianity has restored that age in our climates. That age in our climates that he's talking about is where there is no neither slave nor master. And he ends by saying, naturally, slavery then is to be limited to some particular parts of the world. Goes on, before Christianity had abolished civil slavery in Europe, but like, wait, hold on. Wasn't it the Enlightenment that and the atheist secular people that
oh my gosh
brought that about?
Yeah, utter nonsense.
Same guy, same thing. Okay. And the point I'm just trying to make is like, these were not Christians. These are the people that set the stage for colonialist ideals. There's utilitarian ethics that argued for self-euthanization, population control, eugenics, all these other things. I'm not going to keep going because I've been talking for a while, but you get the point. So
guys, just so you know, when Than said that word, it's not because I was upset by it. It's I don't want the algorithm to flag it. Okay, it's not like, oh, I'm sensitive.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I don't trust the YouTube algorithm. Okay, this is why I say PDF, not because I'm worried about saying the word. It's I don't trust YouTube. Okay, everyone, calm down.
No, I didn't think you were upset about it. No, I also just wasn't thinking, and now I'm gonna get clipped.
Listen, I'm just saying. I do love the audience though, because if you go to like like a secular liberal audience, they'd be like, don't say those words, they're offensive. Our audience is like, say the words, we're not offended, we want to hear them, come on. But I mean, like, come on, we're still on YouTube, we gotta play by their rules for now. If this was Rumble, it might be different, which maybe we should get on there, I don't know. Let's jump to some super chats. PS, the response to Ted Cruz was great, appreciate it. I think that was last week we did that. You guys can watch that if you want. We responded to Ted Cruz with Apostate Prophet, and it was glorious. Is David Falk a Bible scholar? I've come across liberal Bible scholars like Dan McClellan saying his Egyptology credentials don't qualify him to make biblical claims he makes. Utter nonsense. I mean, when David Falk was on my channel last year, we responded to a video on Paulo Gia's channel. This came up, and it's still up. I think it was like last July, so like a year ago, last July. He pointed out numerous Egyptologists have written on the Bible, like Kenneth Kitchen, Jan Osman. Like there's numerous Egyptologists who comment on the Bible, and the reason why is because the cultures blend so much. We need Egyptologists to be commenting on the Bible because there's so much issues about Egypt in there. There's Egyptian loanwords, there's Egyptian practices, there's Egyptian culture that is discussed. Like the idea that, you know, you can't talk about the Bible because you're an Egyptologist is laughably false, to quote Dan McClellan. It's laughably false. That is utter nonsense. Of course they can do that. And
I don't
even
talk about politics because he's not a
scientist. Yeah. And speaking of Dan McClellan, since we're on the topic, I'm ready to cause he posted a video today. Why did this biblical prophecy fail? And I noticed in the comment section, so this is all public, I'm not sharing anything private. Joel Correca, who's a friend and has been on the channel, says, I'm not willing to continue posting here. It appears Dan is deletes critical engagement with his audience and content. I encourage others to check out my perspective on this. So looks like things are getting spicy over there, Than. I'm not sure what's going on.
Mubahala.
Mubahala. Joel, challenge him to a Mubahala.
I know it's not a fight. It's just I want it to be a fight thing.
Yeah, well, Dan posted another video arguing that there's a prophecy that failed in 2 Kings 3. Joel's responded to him on that. We've responded to him on that. I had 2 scholars on the channel to respond to him on that, I think like 2 months or so ago. And Dan keeps saying that like this, like any interpretation other than his is just these dogmatic apologists trying to gin up explanation. It's like, dude, get over yourself. I mean, like at this point, like, I don't know. Ridiculous. But yeah, that just reminded me of that whole nonsense. Yeah. And people that I'm at the point now where if he's going to keep accusing people of being dogmatic, I think he's just trying to hide his own dogma. Than, David Wood doesn't know who Goku is. Humiliated. This would not happen if One Punch Man had watched One Piece, one of the big 3. You see? Oh, hi, IP. Oh, hi, the world that once was.
He really doesn't know who Goku is? I feel like I was with him in Texas. We had a speaking event together, and we talked about Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. I think he does. He's just lying. By the way, because David Wood keeps insisting on streaming at the same time we are, we're going to start streaming an hour early every Monday because I'm sick and tired of this nonsense. So either next week or the following week, we're going to start streaming at 7 p.m. Eastern because, screw that. Monday's our night, and he's streaming at the same time we are. So, yeah, we're going to start undercutting that a little bit. I've had doubt depression going on for 8 years, never had a clear plan, random books, videos, was thinking of reading church history in a seminary class, struggle more with emotional doubts, uncertainty, advice or place you'd start over. Did you see a video I did a while ago? It's got to be like 8 years ago, but it was on depression. I think the title of it is Depression Change Your Life. And I went through the story of Elijah. Yeah, that's the title of it, Depression Change Your Life. I went through the story of Elijah on how to deal with depression. I would recommend starting there and trying to implement some of the biblical lessons we get from that story. So check that out. Maybe that will help. I'm not sure if you've seen that. So I don't know. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm always not sure exactly what to say here because it all depends on what you're going through. If it's a mix of doubt and depression, don't compartmentalize those things.
Yeah.
The Christian life is a lived experience that it involves the intersection of the intellect, the emotion, society, the spiritual, all that stuff. And so when we try to compartmentalize those things and serve them individually, we're never going to actually be satisfied, and existentially satisfied, because we're compartmentalizing things. But aside from that, I don't really know your context. So
Yeah. Appreciate that. If you guys want to put more super chats in, we will answer them in a little bit. And please do. They do help fund the channel. So the more we get, the more we can stay funded, or get fully funded, because we are still underfunded. But let's get back to this video since we've been talking for a while.
Though colonial powers nominally left Africa in the mid-20th century, colonialism never truly ended. There are 1,000 ways colonialism has continued, but here I'll just focus on.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, for example, France is still like extracting a lot of uranium from Africa to fund their nuclear power plants so they can have cheap energy, for example. Like that's one way. And that's not fair. Like they have like a really good deal to get like really cheap uranium that's just undercutting some of the African countries. It's rather unfortunate.
In one way, American Christians specifically have continued it. In 2005, the Bush administration launched a supposed AIDS relief program worldwide. Conservative Christians massively influenced this program as it put $1.4 billion, 2/3 of its funding, into abstinence and fidelity campaigns. A study conducted across 22 countries later found no evidence that these programs did anything to combat AIDS. In fact, this so-called relief program actually made things worse. It funded ultra-conservative Christians such as Martin Tempa in Uganda, who promoted anti-LGBT sentiments. Researchers have also found that arrests and convictions under anti-gay laws have significantly reduced the use of HIV prevention and care services by gay men in Africa, undercutting the progress against the HIV and AIDS epidemic that PEPFAR sought. Yes, conservative Christians in the Bush administration, I'm not exaggerating, funded the eat the poo-poo guy. Like,
and poo-poo's out, huh? And then they eat the poo-poo.
It's funny until you realize what incredibly fucked up things resulted from that.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, let's be clear about something. The Bush administration is not Christianity. The Bush administration, I don't understand how this is like Christianity's fault. Like for example, like I don't think we would ever say like, the Bush administration is exactly directly the result of what Christian thinking is all about, and Christian teachings and doctrines. Where do we get that from? That doesn't logically follow.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I want to say is like, okay, so they were investing money in trying to reduce STDs and promote abstinence. They had good intent. This was not them trying to like extract minerals, take slaves out. I mean, this is them trying to invest money. Did they do a bad job? Yes, 100%. They did a bad job. It was poorly implemented. It was a bad idea. But this seems of them with having good intent. They were trying to invest money into Africa, and then they ended up funding some pretty crazy people. It doesn't seem like it was something that was intended to be like. It's like if I spend a bunch of money, spend a bunch of time trying to witness to people on the streets, and I don't convert anyone. Yeah, I didn't reach my goals, but it wasn't like I was oppressing or hurting them. If I spend a bunch of money trying to teach kids abstinence and it doesn't work, yeah, I wasted time and money, which would be bad. But like, I don't think that would be like, oh, look at all the harm Christianity is causing. That seems to be a logical leap we have going on here in Drew's video.
Yeah, I looked into this a lot, actually.
Of course you did. So whenever you're ready.
Well, look, I was really curious to see what was true and what was not. So, it's not letting me. Wait, there we go.
There you go.
Oh gosh, what's happening? Okay, there we go. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I'll do this again. Okay, so because he calls this like modern colonization. Okay, so first and foremost, the HIV crisis in wait, is that a word I can't say on YouTube?
No, you're fine.
Okay. It's bad. Christians have a duty to care for the sick and uphold human dignity. If one method's not reliable to do this, we should switch and go to a different method. Okay. He gets a few things right. PEPFAR was heavily influenced by U.S. Christian conservatives. There was an abstinence until marriage AUM mandate, and the eat the poo-poo guy is related to this. However, First, Drew starts this whole entire thing out by saying Christians are continuing the colonization through PEPFAR, but I just think that's absolutely insane. Okay. Here's just a case in point of the inconsistency I found. Not from Drew himself, but people that are kind of spewing the same type of rhetoric, right? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Because if you want to go and help the horrible health crisis across the world, that's colonialism. For those that don't know, like, this is a serious problem. In the African, in the source I have here, right? He says the African president says we are really in a national crisis. As far as in Botswana, 75% of women who were pregnant had HIV. So we wanted to go and help. That's the point. But now all of a sudden, with the Trump administration, who's cutting funding to PEPFAR, people are in an uproar. Once PEPFAR was announced, the number of evangelical groups and individuals played an important role in supporting it. They understood their faith called them to care for the sick and the poor and advocate for the oppressed and demonstrate their commitment to sanctity of life. But as this human catastrophe unfolds, few American evangelical pastors, churches, denominations, or church organizations have spoken out against the destruction of PEPFAR, nor, from what I can tell, do they seem inclined to do so. So at this point, it's like, look, if PEPFAR is colonialism, why aren't you guys celebrating the fact that it's getting defunded? Now, for the whole entire point about all the money that's going in there, he's saying about $1.4 million, 2/3 of its funding went into abstinence and fidelity campaigns, so on and so forth. Okay, this is not the narrative you will hear about the PEPFAR at large, though. And here's the details, okay? 4 different chronologies you can kind of break it down to based off this source here. Again, if you guys just look up KFF, you'll find it. And here's what you'll find that's really interesting. It launched in 2003, and initially it was a 5-year, $15 billion program, $15 billion program in prevention in countries of high prevalence of HIV. In 2004, the program set a goal of spending 20% of its funds on prevention of HIV, with 50% designated for prevention of STDs and 50% for other prevention activities. In 2006, it specified 33% of all prevention funds, 2/3 of the funds for sexual transmission, would be earmarked for AOM programs. However, that was a short period relative to the whole entire lifespan of PEPFAR. So when you look at this, and I don't know if you can actually see this graph here, but it from 2008 and on, you'll see that they redistributed the money once they realized at these AOM programs are not working. Since then, in 2008, and since they've changed the bill, now we have huge successes. People are being saved. It's insane, the good things that are going on with PEPFAR. Okay.
Interesting. That's the thing. Drew doesn't talk about this. He highlights one issue, ignores the rest, and this just seems to be like, it's just cherry picking at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Cherry picking.
Cherry picking to form a narrative about Christians being evil or whatever, right? So how is this guy involved? Okay. We already covered the misinformation about the AOM requirement. But first of all, this guy, long story short, his wiki page says that his sister died of HIV. He blamed her promiscuity for it when he was younger. He converted to evangelical Christianity and then sent out on a huge crusade against HIV. It's worth noting that actually, I'm not going to go there. All I was going to say is there is an interesting intersection between some of the homophobia you find in Africa and the fact that it was an Islam-dominated country, but I'll just leave it at that. For the bill, it was horrible, but again, he's not giving you the whole entire picture. Christians did not at large support this bill. Richard A. Cohen, a U.S. psychiatrist associated with the ex-gay movement, condemned the bill. Don Schmier condemns the bill. He calls it horrible, horrible. Some of the nicest people I've ever met are gay people. Southern Baptist pastor Rick Warren called it unchristian. The Anglican Church went against it. The Anglican Reverend Canon went against it. They called it genocide. Martin Sempo's role in all this was that he just endorsed the legislation, but he did not directly get as much money as Drew is making it out to seem either. According to the Children's Aid Fund and PEPFAR logs, Sempo's group, which is the Campus Alliance to Wipe Out AIDS, received about $43,950. And that was because he was a sub partner from 2005 to 2007 for the Primetimer magazine. However, he didn't get all that money. We don't know the full story yet, but he received a small amount of that, and his funding cut off because they weren't performing. As for Sempa and the bill being backed by the family, I can't find much on who the family, this dark shadow organization he's going to allude to later. However, the only link we have between the family and Martin Sempa, the guy that put up the bill, is that basically David Bahati, the guy that put up the bill, said the idea for the bill first sprang up from a conversation with its members with the fellowship or the family in 2008. The family tried to distance themselves from the gays bill. In 2010, Bob Hunter, someone involved with the family in relation to Uganda, publicly called on Bahati to withdraw the bill, but in 2012. And Hunter, the guy that we're talking about, actually labels this exchange. This is the source for this as well. Every American with any connection to Uganda for the fellowship has condemned the bill. And there's just so much here, right? Bahati also states spending a lot of time with the family, from which he learned from the National Prayer Breakfast, was the greatest sin, not murder. That was from Drew's source. However, Drew's sources that don't cite anything. There's not a single citation in any of these sources, okay? I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying, like, a lot of this just seems to be a mountain out of a molehill. The whole entire point I'm just trying to make here is, like, look, I'm not endorsing this family shadow organization, whatever you want, but this dark money conspiracy theory thing seems to be just that.
And like, let's I mean, like, look at all the Christians you cited condemning it. Like, this idea that this is all this guy, or this is just all Christianity's doing is absurd. Like, that is a logical leap. And like, I'm really getting sick and tired of calling these guys the skeptics, because they'll just make videos with these bogus claims, like we had to do a couple months ago with Rationality Rules, who didn't even read his own damn sources. And you just went and looked at them and said, oh, they completely contradict him. Now we have Drew making a bunch of cherry-picked claims. These guys are not acting like skeptics. They make a bunch of baseless claims. And then people like you and I, like specifically you here, really did a lot of the hard work, has to go around and find a whole bunch of sources to just show how complete and total nonsense
it was a slog to get through.
Yeah. But I mean, like, this is what they do. They make a bunch of claims. We got to do a bunch of research to show it's nonsense. And then we're called the religious fundamentalists.
And we're the ones that believe things based off of hive mind indoctrination. But, you could just say whatever you want about history and all this other stuff. And then, yeah, you get the point.
Yeah. By the way, when Drew put this out, I posted this comment below. I think it got flagged. I don't think Drew deleted it. It's not there. It got flagged for some reason because I posted another comment and it showed up. But I'd love to have a conversation with him on this topic. He's welcome to come on this channel. If he wants to come on now, he can just drop in the live chat. Say, I'm here. I want to come on. I will send him the link. He can come in anytime he wants. Like, let's talk about this stuff.
Where are you at? No, seriously, though, I'd love to have a conversation with him.
Like, can we start living up to the name of rational thinking skeptics? Because I'm sick and tired of doing all the homework for them. Like, we did the same thing with Rationality Rules a few months ago, and we've done it with other past streams as well. It's the same thing. I don't know what to do, man. I don't know. This is ridiculous. All right, let's jump back to that video, then we'll get some super chats.
Since then, U.S. Christian right groups have put over $280 million into promoting extreme anti-LGBT laws and dismantling women's reproductive rights around the world, with over $50 million of that money targeting Africa. The largest spender in Africa is the Fellowship Foundation, a shadowy Christian organization with ties to the family, a coalition of anti-democracy Christian extremists who are all high up in the U.S. government and started the National Prayer Breakfast. They spent $20 million targeting Uganda, where their associate David Bahati wrote a bill that puts LGBTQ people to death. It also imprisons anyone who knows a queer person and does not report them to the authorities for execution. The bill passed in Uganda in 2023. It's the law now. And how could it not be, with millions of Christian extremist dollars behind it? This is just one of many Christian organizations funding the brutalization of Africans today. And if you want to read more about it, I'll link all my sources down in the description.
Okay.
I covered basically everything that he said in there already. It's
you
just
did. Yeah.
how can we just kind of cherry pick the? I don't want to be I don't want to be mean to Drew here. I really don't. I'm just frustrated.
Be mean.
because-
I'll do it. I'll do it. Yeah, I'll be mean. Do it.
You'll be
Anyway.
mean?
I mean, listen, it's cherry picked. I just any Christians in the live chat, just say, do you want a bill that kills LGBTQ people? Do you support that? Do you promote that? How many Christians do we see saying that? It's typically a
None.
handful of nut jobs on X that have faceless profiles and are into like Nick Fuentes. Like that's it. Like I'm pretty sure if you polled Christians across America, 90 to 95% would say no, they're not for killing LGBTQ people. Like, do you really think this is coming out of Christianity? Really?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, and it's literally just twisting facts. Facts about something that's helping and saving a lot of people. Are there ways it's being mishandled? Yes. Is that Christianity's fault? No. Are Christians just in charge of all of this? No. Like, what are all these people saying no to?
Saying
Sorry.
no, they don't support such a bill. Is what I was saying.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And let's okay, again, at the end of the day, what we have to go on is research, studies. Okay, so here's some actual studies that looked at LGBTQ prejudice. And they said, you know what, we're seeing this correlation between religiosity and LGBTQ prejudice. What if this is just a spurious correlation? What if it's just correlative, not causal? And they found it. They said they found and other factors like traditionalism and right-wing authoritarianism. They found that traditionalism fully mediated the path connecting religiosity and prejudice towards sexual and gender diversity. That is, it not only reduced the magnitude of the association from 0.3 to negative 0.23, meaning religiosity is actually negatively correlated with LGBTQ prejudice. And again, this was done in Brazil, where the majority of the sample was Christians. Another study found the similar thing. They found that right-wing authoritarianism mediated the racial prejudice and LGBTQ prejudice, these kinds of things. It mediated the prejudice link. Here's another important study unpacking the drivers of LGBTQ prejudice. Regarding the main setbacks for the promotion of LGBT plus rights, the empirical results suggest that religious affiliation can act as a cultural constraint in countries where Islamism, Hinduism, and Buddhism are the most followed religions. Contrarily, religious affiliation does not seem to be constraining LGBT plus legislation in Christian majority countries. In other words, which religion has been the best for LGBT plus legislation for dealing with prejudice? Christianity. It's not Buddhism. It's not Hinduism. It's definitely not Islam. Go figure. It's Christianity. So like Christians are always blamed with these they just want to kill gay people. They hate gay people. It's utter nonsense. Like when you actually look at the data, are there bad religious people that go after LGBT plus people and are prejudiced? Yes. But they tend to be the marginalized cases. They don't represent the majority. And the research seems to bear this out. In a lot of those people, it's not even Christianity causing that. It's factors like traditionalism, right-wing authoritarianism that are driving this prejudice. Like that needs to be factored in and taken into account.
Yep.
Like I don't like it's absurd. And then these are the same people that are worried about being Islamophobic.
Yeah, I don't want to psychoanalyze it. At the end of the day, it just feels like an ideal. Like, who cares about the truth so long as the narrative I get to spin serves my ideological and social political goals? That's what it feels like right now.
Yeah. So we got a super chat. Is the Lord's sacrifice at Calvary, was it sufficient and it tore the veil? Then how do certain sects justify praying to intermediaries? I don't understand how that's connected.
Yeah.
Because you can pray to God and the Holy Spirit directly, but you can also ask other people to pray for you. That's all that what Catholics and Orthodox are doing. They're just asking the saints to pray for them on their behalf, just like you can ask someone living today to pray for you. So
yeah, they're not asking for forgiveness from the intermediaries or the saints.
Yeah. Is my sin the reason for my mental illness? No, I would say probably not on a high degree. No, that is not at all ever suggested in the Bible. Where can I get a paperback copy of Sijuati's book on Swinburne like Than has? Everywhere it seems to be pre-order.
You got to be friends with him.
It's coming out, man. You be patient, Fred. If it's on
Yeah.
pre-order, you're going to get a copy. Just wait a little bit. Jeez. It's coming. Sorry I'm late. Well, I apologize, but I'm not reading the rest of your super chat because that's creepy. Apologetics. You're going to turn. This is just going to open the door to all sorts of weird stuff. Then I'm just freaking ready. Look at what you did. Apologetics is massive for an average person. What's the best topic or area to focus study when you only have evenings to study? Whatever topic you think you need to study. Like, you don't have to study everything. Don't worry about it. You don't have to become a massive computer database of all the apologetics. What are you
like to
interested
study?
in?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to study? Study that.
That's how I do it.
That's how I do it too. I focus on video scripts I'm working on, or scripts or topics I'm currently interested in and want to make videos on. So that's where kind of I go. So you should do the same. Is it true Jews preferred to live under Islamic rule at one point back then? If so, why? Also love you, Teehee. Me. Okay. Anyway, so the first thing I would say is that now that it depends. Yeah, there were times when Christians were acting incredibly, horribly wrong, and there were times that Muslims were acting a lot more lenient. Depends on the ruler and the time. Overall, though, I would say Islam has been far worse, just generally speaking, and the research bears that out as well. So you can point to times where Christians were engaging in horrible behavior. No one's going to deny that. But you can also point to times that Muslims were engaging in horrible behavior. And it seems if you read like Maimonides, for example, he complains like the Muslims treat them or like the worst to them of all the peoples. Like they were the worst. So it really depends on the time period, who's in charge, all that stuff. IP called David Wood in AP to a mubahala for start time. You see? Yeah, someone go over there and tell them to stop starting the same time we do. How dare they? But we're going to starting an hour earlier to undercut them because they keep like we'll plan a stream a day before, and then David Hood is like 2 hours before we stream. I'm going to go live too. Like, thanks, David. We split viewers. It's stupid. So we're going to stream earlier. Do you think homosexuality is inborn or that external factors are the cause? Why not? Why does it have to be one or the other? I think there's genetic components, and I think there are external factors that can influence people in that way. I don't think it's got to be one or the other. I think there can, it says we're born into sin, for example. I think there are people born with anger issues, lust issues. I
was predisposed to. I still am predisposed to anger issues. Believe it or not.
Liar.
No, I'm serious. Oh man, I would. Never mind. I'm not going to go into fan lore right now. It's fine.
Oh yeah. When I think of fan, I think angry.
I know most people are surprised by it.
All right. Early Christians believed Jesus was sinless. Could this be based on a more fundamental belief that he was God? Evidence of early high Christology. Yeah, it can be related to that, I think. I mean, of course, you could have a sinless human. Like, for example, the Catholic Church believes Mary is sinless and she's not a goddess or is part of the Trinity or anything like that, despite what the Quran says. But I wouldn't use that as my go-to argument for sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're a Protestant, you use it. If you're not, so there's that. So, all right. We will keep getting in super chats. We appreciate them dearly. Let's get back to Drew's video since we're an hour in and we're still not halfway through it.
People, and by people I mean Western conservative Christians and their handful of token ex-Muslims and atheists, like to point to Islam as...
Okay, I think he's talking about us. friendly ex-Muslim, or if you're still in there, I wonder if you think he's talking about us.
Hey,
Pete, he's got you. Let's play that again.
Conservative Christians and their handful of token ex-Muslims and atheists like...
That seemed a little rude. I mean, because if he's talking about people like, like Nuria Khan, Infidel Noodle, friendly ex-Muslim, and then David Wood, myself, you, AP. Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Like to point to Islam as being the source of violence against queer people around the world. In Nigeria, for instance, you can only get the death penalty for being gay in the northern
earlier
version of Sharia. But
Yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of a good point, Drew, that goes against your comments earlier, but I digress.
clearly, Christians are doing violence too. They're just doing it covertly through dark money groups because they have a lot of money, and that gives them all the power they need to create the large-scale violence they want to see.
What?
This is what
Source, Drew. Trust me, bro.
This is why I went through all that data before he said this, so that way people could understand just how ridiculous it actually sounds once they actually have the data in mind.
This is Christians want to do all this violence to gay people too. I know, because I can read their secret hearts.
Funding $40 million, $1 million to
Listen, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. We're not throwing gay people off rooftops. We're actively against that. And as the research I showed earlier, Christian religiosity does not lead to prejudice like Islam does. I mean, like, if Friendly Ex-Muslim is still here, I would love for him to comment on this. This is insane. I'd love to get them. But I mean, like, first of all, Islamists have a lot of money too. Hello, Saudi Arabia. Like, they're funding all sorts of crazy things, and they're acting on it in so many weird ways. Like, actions speak louder than words. If this was the case, we'd see Christians doing the exact same thing that these Muslim extremists are doing. Like, it's an absurd comparison. Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, this is just whataboutism. Like, yes, there are bad Christians, but are better for human rights and LGBTQ rights, for, right to life, these kinds of things, than Islam could ever be. Like, this is an absurd. This is just whataboutism. There's no comparison. One is clearly better than the other.
Fact 2, the abortion issue was invented to cover for racism. We all know that abortion is a major issue for a lot of Christians in the United States. They strongly oppose it because they believe something like the soul of a human being comes into existence and achieves personhood at conception. More commonly put, life begins at conception. So, ending a pregnancy to them is the same as ending any other human life.
Oh, real quick, one more thing about the Islam thing. Drew, if you watch this, in 2 weeks, I'm debating this issue. Please watch that debate and please focus on the research.
Which is wrong. The Catholic Church has preached against abortion at some stage of fetal development for many centuries at least. But Protestants, they only latched onto this idea in large numbers about 45 years ago. Yes, this is the same issue that some Christians have committed actual terrorism and political assassinations over. They've firebombed clinics with people in them, among other things, forcing Congress to pass laws explicitly protecting reproductive clinics of all kinds.
This is a political issue.
Recently,
okay, so I'll be honest, I have no idea what that was about. I tend to stay out of the political stuff because it's all a bunch of he said, she said. Let's exaggerate what Edith said is doing and throw the principle of charity right out the window. So I'm immediately skeptical. But
yeah, I'm not going to comment on the fire bombings or the assassinations when we get to that point, because it's really hard to figure out what's actually happening there. I don't know what to think there.
A Christian nationalist man assassinated pro-choice Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hartman and her husband. He also shot pro-choice State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, though they fortunately survived. He apparently had a long list of other intended targets composed of Democratic politicians as well as abortion providers. Who he targeted tells us a lot about this guy's motivations. So I'm not surprised that over 70 sources have reported on this.
Okay, he's going to go into an ad here, so we're going to stop there because we're
the timestamp where he stops the ad is 6:50-ish.
Yeah, I know. I marked it down. So my first question is, where is the evidence that Christianity caused this violence? Like, where's the evidence of that? We're basically just citing some random cases, anecdotal evidence, and going, oh, look at this. Yeah, okay. I could do that too. I could cite Stalin, Jim Jones, who was not a Christian. He was actually an atheist when he started his cult. People don't realize that. I could cite all sorts of bad atheists. I could cite about the recent arrests happening at the Washington Post of people that were into PDF porn, and they were, like, am I going to blame all that on atheism? Am I going to say, yes, this is what atheism leads to every time? No, I would need an actual study with robustness checks, a multivariable analysis to do something like that. We're just getting these random cases and then blaming it on Christianity. That's absurd. I mean, remember when there was a vegan that once shot up, I think, YouTube headquarters? Did we blame that on veganism? Does veganism cause violence now? No, that would be silly. But when it comes to religion, atheists get to do this all the time. Christian does a bad thing, therefore it's Christianity's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Let me put up on my slides here. When we look at the data, though, we don't see evidence that Christianity leads to crime, violence. We actually see the opposite. So again, I cited a lot this research and a lot more in a study, in a video. Is Christianity harmful? Which is like 55 minutes of just going over study after study after study, dealing with all the atheist objections I've gotten over the years. But this one, they said they surveyed several studies in this review, this systematic review. They said approximately 90% of the studies, they found beneficial relationship between crime and delinquency and religiosity. Only 9% of the studies found no associations or reported mixed findings, whereas only 2 found a positive association. Another meta-analysis here said we examined the data from 60 studies and found that religion had a statistically significant, moderately sized effect on crime. Our findings give confidence that religion does indeed have some deterrent effect. Here's another meta-analysis. Among the 6, the relationship between church attendance and drug use was found to be largely relative to the other bivariate associations. That is, religious involvement tends to decrease delinquency in part because it's likely to increase the level of fear of punishment, social bonds, self-control, while decreasing delinquent learning and strain-related negative emotions. Okay, the religious effect, however, is often found to remain significant after controlling for those variables. I've cited this study before from Davis Brown. States with a Christian GRP, that's government religious preference, are less likely to initiate an interstate armed conflict. So when you have a culture that's Christian and they have a government religious preference that's Christian, we see interstate armed conflict decreases, violence decreases. So it seems in the research, religiosity is leading to less crime and violence and aggression in interstate armed conflict. So when you're saying that, oh yeah, their Christianity is causing all this harm, just like Islam is. Well, you know what's funny, Drew, is that in this study, he also looked at Muslims and Islam. He found that Islam, after several robustness checks, is positively associated moderately with more interstate armed conflict. So when you look at the data, we have good reason to look at Islam as being problematic in this issue. We don't have good reason to think it's Christianity, though. In fact, we would expect violence, aggression, these things have decreased when it comes to Christianity. So, yeah, Christians do bad things. Atheists do bad things. Muslims do bad things. We need to stop and go, can we actually look at what the motivating factors are in this issue? When it comes to Christianity, it's a lot harder to do that. I would say it can be hard to do that with atheism. It's not be nearly as hard with Islam, though.
Out of curiosity, I just Googled. I don't know how much factualness there is to this, but I was just curious, right? Because he's like talking about how people are firebombing the pro-choice clinics and stuff like that. So I just was looking up to see if there's any violence from pro-choice activists towards the pro-life agencies, and there is. So I just find that interesting because I've never really heard about that before. I actually had to like ask the question rather than have the question presented to me. Then again, I might be a bad test sample there because I don't really consume content and stuff like that. I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up.
Yeah. So, all right, let's play a little bit more and then we'll jump into some super chats again because we do appreciate them coming in. Sources. I'm jumping ahead. I'm skipping the ad because we don't do ads here. We rely on donations.
And we don't work for them.
We don't work for you. So we're skipping your ad. And don't contact us about getting an ad because we don't do ads. We are a nonprofit. We rely on donations. I don't really want to do ads either. Especially like, I just feel like it'd be weird to be like, hey, just want you guys to know Jesus loves you. But first, Have you heard about these wallets? They're amazing. Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple, but he may not have. They had these amazing wallets. I don't know if I could do that. Anyway, let's move on.
Protestants 50 years ago didn't oppose abortion. The Southern Baptist Convention openly called for it to be legalized throughout the 1970s. When Roe v. Wade was decided, the president of the SBC said, "I have always felt that it was only after a child was born and had a life separate from its mother that it became an individual person. And it has always, therefore, seemed to me that what is best for the mother and for the future should be allowed." In the late 70s, Billy Graham refused to participate in anti-abortion campaigns. And as this article from Politico says, even James Dobson, the founder of Focus on the Family, who later became an implacable foe of abortion, acknowledged in 1973 that the Bible was silent on the matter, and therefore it was plausible for an evangelical to believe that a developing embryo or fetus was not regarded as a full human being. So, what changed this? Throughout the 70s, white evangelicals were mobilizing against the progress of the civil rights movement, specifically desegregation. The IRS no longer allowed tax-exempt status for whites-only Christian academies like Bob Jones University. Jerry Falwell, who called this progress the civil wrongs movement, also had his segregation academies affected. After the Republican Party nominated Reagan as its candidate for president in 1980, Reagan spoke against this effective desegregation, but said nothing about abortion. This resonated with their base, but didn't help win new people to their side. They had to find a way to promote white Christian segregationist interests without putting people off. Enter Paul Michael Weyrich, also known as the architect of the religious right. During the midterm elections of 1978, Roman Catholic anti-abortion activists helped flip 4 Senate seats for Republicans, and Weyrich saw an opportunity. He alerted Falwell and other white evangelicals that they could use opposition to abortion, a more respectable issue, to energize and grow their following.
Okay, so then, so Christians were already against abortion, and then rich people just hijacked it.
Dude,
That's all I heard there.
this conspiracy theory goes so deep, Mike. I called Matt multiple times to vent to him about how annoyed I was about this. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Do your thing.
Can I go on a rant? Okay.
Go on a rant.
All right. Okay. I have to press a button. Sorry. Okay. First, Protestantism inherits a pro-life tradition from the early church. Okay. We have the Didache. Thou shalt not do murder. Blah 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 blah. No abortion. Tertullian, to hinder a birth is merely a speedier man killing. Okay. The split between the East and West didn't affect this either. Okay. Both Rome and Constantinople warned against it. The unanimity kept on going. Fast forward to the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther speaks out against it. John Calvin speaks out against it. Dietrich Bonhoeffer speaks out against it. Karl Barth speaks out against it. Drew's just way off base here. Okay. Furthermore, now we have to ask the question, well, why did Christians have to mobilize the way they did here? Okay. It's true. Evangelical Protestants did not have the uniformity they do have today on the topic. However, it doesn't mean that they lanched onto the topic for the first time, and you have to really pick through the weeds here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
At the timestamp of 654 and 959, he says that conservative Protestants were not strongly opposed to abortion until the late 1970s. He cites the SPC. However, link to the SPC resolution in 1971, he even shows this, right? You can see, therefore, be it resolved that this convention expressed a belief that society has a responsibility to affirm to the laws of the state the high view of the sanctity of human life, including fetal life, yada, yada, yada. Then he says, be it therefore resolved that we upon the Southern Baptists work for legislation that will allow for the possibility of abortion under such conditions such as rape, incest, clear evidence of severe fatal deformity, blah, blah, blah. This is still pro-life, Mike, right?
Yeah.
This is still pro-life, and this was even before the 1960s, okay? We have major figures like Billy Graham and James Dobson that he points to, okay? And I think that this was also just really disingenuous to point out. I don't think Drew's at fault here because this goes pretty deep into some of the arguments and conspiracy theories, but basically, look, Billy Graham was refusing to participate in anti-abortion campaigns Not the way that Drew is pointing this out, though, okay? Billy Graham was cautious about politically organizing around abortion in the 1970s because he's on the record saying evangelicals can't be closely identified with any particular party or person. We have to stand in the middle to preach to all the people, right and left. I haven't been faithful to my own advice in the past, but I will in the future. 12 years before the Roe decision, mind you, a young woman wrote to Billy Graham with the following question. Though through a young and foolish sin, I had an abortion. I now feel guilty of murder. How can I ever know forgiveness? And Graham's reply in the article was, abortion is as violent a sin against God, nature, and oneself that one could commit. If you want to see the source, you can find that link. It's a newspaper. You're going to have to buy access to the newspaper because it's really old. I dug it up. It's there. Okay. Billy Graham is on the record. Dobson, talk about making a mountain out of a molehill. The comment that there isn't an explicit reference about this topic in the Bible is not all of a sudden not being non-committal. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
This whole argument is based off of Randall Balmer, who wrote 2 books on this, okay? And the claim basically follows 4 different steps. Evangelicals didn't care about abortion pre-1980. We already covered how that's nonsense. And then he argues that desegregation and IRS pressure galvanized their political awakening, and then Falwell and Wyeth turned to abortion tactically post-1978. And the conclusion follows, right? So let's cover those last 2 points then. The IRS decision for Green versus Connolly in 1971 revoked tax-exempt status for racist private schools, and evangelical political engagement was already underway at this point over abortion, family breakdown, pornography, and other stuff. The outrage in 1971 was not about evangelicals supporting segregation, as they like to suggest, though, okay? It was anti-discrimination evangelicals outraged by the fact that the IRS and the government overstepped and presumed schools guilty of being segregationist until they were proven innocent. So until the 1950s, the government schools in many southern states were racially segregated. The U.S. Supreme Court's Brown v. Board of Education decision in 1954 ruled the segregation to be unconstitutional, and as a result, due to the desegregation of the public schools, many private schools were created segregation academies. That's the historical background. In 1969, Green versus Connolly denied tax-exempt status of racially segregated private schools. From there, many new private Christian schools were formed during the 1970s because of other changes happening in the culture, and they formed for religious reasons, not racially motivated reasons. After Jimmy Carter became president, the new director of the Internal Revenue Service implemented a policy where many non-discriminatory private Christian schools were arbitrarily deemed segregation academies, and they lost their tax-exempt status. So from there, like I said, the government is arbitrarily choosing who is segregating, who is not, based off of the way that different quotas are met, basically, at the end of the day, okay? And they're understandably going to be upset about this because they're being treated unfairly and arbitrarily. And there's tons of relevant literature on this. In November 1979, Fordham Law Review contains an article by Thomas Stephen Neuberger and Thomas C. Crumpler titled Tax-Exempt Religious Schools Under Attack, Conflicting Goals of Religious Freedom and Racial Integration. And they basically demonstrate exactly what I'm trying to point out here, that Christian school supporters were reacting because of the new IRS regulations, and they were being denied due process. They later iterate this point. The religious community has not opposed the legitimate governmental policy of eradicating racial discrimination in private schools through the revocation of schools' tax-exempt status. Rather, its concern, according to the spokesman of religious schools, stems from the method which the government, through the IRS, has sought to implement its policy from the fear that enforcement of the procedure will lead to greater governmental involvement in church affairs.
Yeah.
And I cite a bunch of other sources here that kind of just point this out. The really interesting point is that Jewish and Amish schools were having the same issues, but they don't talk about that. They just want to talk about this. Because, of course, Balmer's not interested, and these people are not interested in the Jewish or Amish schools. Their only point is to convince people that conservative Christian political activism is motivated at its very root to defend racial segregation. As Balmer himself puts it in his book, the religious right has never been about the advancement of biblical values. The modern politically conservative evangelical activism you see today is a movement rooted in the perpetuation of racial segregation. But who cares about the nuance, right? It's just easy to mark your ideological opponents as racist, and that way you don't actually have to deal with their arguments and their positions because nobody wants to listen to them.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing is like, where is, how does any of this like being pro-life lead to segregation? Drew never explains that in his video.
It's all based on the conspiracy theory, right? Because the narrative is twisting the idea that the evangelicals were upset about the law that was passed, taking away tax exempt status of people that were racially segregating. But because they're denied due process, they lost their tax exempt status. And they're mad, not because they can't segregate, but because they're just presumed guilty and they were denied due process. That was what they were upset. So all they're doing is, well, they were upset. Let's not talk about why they're upset. It just happened to be that they're upset around the same time the segregation stuff was starting to happen. And yeah.
And that's going to push a lot of Christians more towards conservatism or libertarianism with that kind of stuff going on. They're seeing government overreach. They're getting upset. What do you think they're naturally going to do? They're naturally going to go more into like the Republican conservative party because of that kind of stuff, which is Drew's going to about to get into, which we're going to talk about, because he's going to blame it all on, again, like being hijacked by evil corporations and all this stuff. And I'm not saying like everything he's saying is false, but he's leaving out a lot of very important details. I mean, there's a lot of reasons Christians became more conservative in this time period. It's not the way he's painting it out. Victory in Christ says, what do you take as fullness of Gentiles in Romans 11, since the word for fullness never refers to numerology in the New Testament? What do you mean? I don't understand this question. Is this a preterist question again?
Probably, but I'm just
fullness of Gentiles means the fullness of Gentiles. It means what it says, that all the Gentiles will come in. That's what it means. Okay. Drinking game. Take a shot when for all the wrong statements. Nope, you'd get alcohol poisoning. We're not going to do that, Scarlett. I don't want anyone over here to die. Thank you, Isaac. Maxim says, I like how bro doesn't mention that these things were overwhelmingly popular in Africa, so it's definitely not evidence of colonialism. LOL.
Oh, man. Sorry. For anybody interested in this, this topic of colonialism is like riddled with a lot of secular activist people that it's just, the literature is really difficult to wade through. You have to learn how to actually seek through the literature. So instead of like looking up Christianity and colonialism, look up indigenization of Christianity if you want to find this out. And then you'll find literature that actually makes sense a lot of the data and goes into the nuance. Sorry, I just really wanted to point that out.
Someone please tell me what Stan's channel is. It's Exploring Reality.
It's not my, this is my channel. That was my old channel.
Yeah, old channel. Yeah. Let's see here. Just saw where you pointed out that Bart Ehrman accidentally said Jesus is God in Mark. Damn good stuff. My dad liked it, and he lives in Breeze Theology. Thanks, appreciate it. Yeah, I got a video on the channel where Bart Ehrman accidentally tells us Jesus is God. I came out like in May, so if you guys want to check that out, just go to the channel and you'll find it quite easily because it was pretty recent. Also, limiting reproductive freedoms means ending abortion. So this is actually an instance of Christians preventing Africans from being killed. Yeah, this is another thing I was going to bring up in a little bit. Like, I was going to bring this up, and you brought it up early. So yeah, I mean, like, we're unapologetically pro-life. We don't want babies to be killed. We're not going to apologize for that. If you're going to say we're evil for wanting babies to live, I'm sorry, you have a warped view of reality. You want to rephrase it as us attacking reproductive rights. No, we don't want babies to be killed. Not apologizing for that. I don't understand how I don't understand how a mind can twist that to be evil. I remember even Louis C.K. doing jokes on this, going like, they think babies are being killed. Like, what do you expect them to do? Like, yeah, like this is insane. Then, do you play DBZ, Dokkan Battle?
Dokkan? No, I don't.
No, he's got work to do. He doesn't have time for that.
I don't have time for video games, sadly.
Do animals have rights in y'all's philosophy? It depends.
I think they do, depending what you mean by the word right.
Right. Freedom from torture, I'd say, like
Yeah.
unnecessary torture would be a good one. I think we have the right to kill and eat animals, but I think it should be done humanely, and I think that's part of it. But this is a whole issue to wade into. That's what I would just say. Do you think that ST is compatible with Sijuwadi's model? I think social Trinitarianism. Yeah, I do. On social Trinitarianism, a person is a center of knowledge. Yeah, I do. I don't understand why he's.
I've been texting with Josh for the last month and a half about this.
Okay.
So we're working through some stuff.
Yeah. I hear that both can be possible, and I think clarity would help gay Christians, i.e. coming to terms with that God made them such versus overcoming external pressures, different lines of reasoning. Yeah, I mean, I remember Sam Alberry. He identifies as gay, but he's celibate and he's a pastor. He says like gay Christians are not called to do anything more than what straight Christians are called to do. We are all called to die to ourselves. We are all called to die to ourselves. Gay Christians just as much as straight Christians. It's not like they have a harder burden. Everyone is called to die to themselves. There are benefits in singleness and there are benefits in marriage. There are hardships in marriage and there are hardships in singleness. I mean, there's all sorts of issues going into this. So Sam Alberry's got a good short little book on this. I recommend people read. But yeah, I think there's a lot to cover here that maybe we should do a stream on at some point. Down the road.
I've looked into this myself a lot. This person specifically actually knows the church I went to. She's, and so she knows that there's people that are gay at our church. And this is one of the reasons why I've looked into it, just because I was trying to understand it a little bit more. And if you guys know me,
but Fan, you're supposed to be hanging them if they're in your church.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, forgot. But no, I really wanted to understand some of the science behind this all and the psychology and all that jazz. There's a lot to this that I just don't know how to package right now.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'd say is we're all called to die to ourselves. Most men don't want to be monogamous. Okay, too bad. You're not supposed to just live your truth. I was born this way. Straight men are not supposed to say, I was born this way, therefore I'm allowed to sleep with multiple women, go around and have affairs. No, that's not how it works. You are called to die to yourself and be committed to one monogamous relationship, period, end of story, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Some people are called to singleness. Some people are called to pastoral care. Some people are called to all sorts of things. We're all called to die to ourselves and our sinful desires. That's what we need to keep in mind. Hi, IP. Is there any book about the Holy Spirit that is equivalent to the incarnate Christ and his critics? The money is for your degree. Much, much appreciated. I do appreciate the very, very generous super chat, sir. And I love the image you got there of that powerful, powerful man attacking any alligators and keeping them at bay for us. We appreciate his service. I mean,
there isn't a book that I know of.
There might be a good one called The Forgotten God, which is focused on the Holy Spirit, is what I would say. The Forgotten God. So get that book is what I would say. That might be the best one to go to for this. Another good book would be the New Testament. It covers a lot of good evidence the Holy Spirit is God. Yes. So, all right, let's get back to Drew's video here. Why is it not going up? There it is.
In preparation for the presidential election of 1980, these guys started churning out anti-abortion propaganda, saying that in just one generation, the one generation that did the civil rights movement, our society has degenerated into holding a low view of human life. But also it now puts man at the center of all things instead of God. What? Humanism, secularized society, and liberal theology are all eroding Western civilization. We must return to Judeo-Christian values where all human life is actually valued.
Wouldn't that go against segregation? Saying that? You say all human life is value. We need to go return Judeo-Christian values where we're all of one human family. Therefore, segregation? How does that follow?
Remember how I said that they were already in an uproar because of family declines and pornography and all this other stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have no idea how any of this is supposed to help them in their evil conspiracy to bring back segregation. Like, where is the logic here? Connect the dots, please. Drew does not do that, unfortunately.
Sound familiar? Yeah. This worked to galvanize evangelicals into a united political force for religious Republicans, framing the rejection of the civil rights movement as respect for all human life. Racist Ronald Reagan went on to win the presidency. The religious right became an obscenely powerful force in American politics, and American Protestants still largely oppose abortion. The force behind all of this was not love for God or adherence to sincerely held theological beliefs. No. Protestant theology and politics took this shape because some of them 45 years ago deeply hated Black people.
Where is the logic here? Like, how
I
does saying
Again-
we should respect all life means you hate Black people? Like,
I went through all that stuff I did before we finished the whole timestamp. Because now you see how ridiculous it is once you contextualize the history.
for those just tuning in, summarize in like a minute.
Summarize in a minute. Okay. Segregation was happening. And the government put together a law saying you can't segregate anymore in your schools, otherwise you lose your tax exempt status. A bunch of Christian schools were getting targeted and losing their tax against status without due process. They got mad, and because of that and a whole bunch of other issues that were going on, things like that bill, abortion, pornography, family issues, where the people started actually unifying and getting engaged in politics because the government had overstepped their bounds and not giving people due process.
Yeah.
The argument goes, well, they never cared about abortion before this. Therefore, they just wanted to keep segregation because, look, they were mad that they couldn't segregate, even though they're not mad about being segregated. They're being mad about not getting due process. But the history just debunks that.
I mean, like, and again, like the reason why a lot of Christians are going conservative in this day and age is things you mentioned: rise of pornography, rise of more atheism in academia. The sexual revolution was also going on. Government overreach, attacking churches. What do you think is going to happen? You're going to push people into conservatism. You're going to make Christians go in that direction. And it wasn't the case, as we'll get into in a little bit here. 100 years ago, a lot of Christians were considered very liberal, progressive, social conservatives. They were pushing the social gospel. Then government got too powerful. They started going after churches, and then Christians naturally moved into the conservative wing. Like, there's a lot more going on here that is not being told in this video.
No, but the simpler
Fact
answer
3.
is that they're all
The
racist.
dominant
What
The
were you
simpler
saying?
answer is they're all racist. And
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always that.
American Christian view of politics was created by oil companies.
God made men to work. God didn't make men to vote for other men to tax men who
Who is
do
this
work
guy?
so they don't have to work. God made men to work.
I'm sure you've heard all this before. The state shouldn't redistribute wealth. That's theft at best and atheistic communism at worst. We believe in freedom under God. We vote conservative and support free enterprise because anything else is out of alignment with true Christian values. That popular Christian idea only took hold about 80 years ago, though. Its creators, the National U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Association of Manufacturers, the president of Sun Oil, and their employee, the wealthy pastor James W. Fifield. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Christian idea of the social gospel was popular. Christians should seek to meet the earthly needs of every person, not just save their soul. We must work together to rid the world of social injustice, economic inequality, corporate greed, and worker exploitation. This was the basis of FDR's New Deal policies following the Great Depression. It raised taxes on the ultra-wealthy, ended child labor, protected workers, and created Social Security. Most people, Christians included, liked this. Wealthy corporate giants did not. So they developed a plan to take advantage of the trust that Americans placed in Christian ministers.
So, with regards to the first point, he's right. Christians were pushing the social gospel a lot.
Yep.
120 some years ago. John Compton.
But we're
does
also
a
being
book-
racist.
Also being racist, yes. Yeah, he notes this in his book, The End of Empathy. Indeed, the most mainline elites held firm to the ideals of the social gospel, insisting on a version of Christianity in which social justice, spiritual well-being were linked. Well into the 1920s, the Methodists, Northern Baptists, Presbyterians, Congregationalists, Episcopalians continued to issue denominational pronouncements urging new federal laws to prohibit child labor, improve working conditions for women, and protect the right of workers to organize. Similarly, most mainline seminaries remained firmly committed to educating and aspiring ministers to the practical business of social reform, even as their faculties divided over matters of theology. And you can see, for example, a chart from his book here. These Christian organizations were big in things like child labor, pensions, getting good food, women's labor laws, child and maternal health, and prohibition. So not saying they were perfect on everything. Robert Fogel in The Fourth Great Awakening talks about, he says, American churches in the lay movements they generated were in the forefront of early social reforms, such as the rights of trade unions, strikes, the use of state and federal fiscal policy to redistribute income from the rich to the poor, the right of women to vote, prohibition, and the provision of universal primary education. The greatest of all the reform movements in American history, the abolition of slavery, was for decades almost exclusively a religious movement until a number of religiously inspired Northern politicians developed brilliant tactics and strategies necessary to create a winning anti-slavery coalition. So yeah, this is very much a lot of this stuff was Christian. What happened though? Well, if you read a lot of the research Stan was bringing up, things got out of control. Christians were saying the government could be a force for good. It can help people. And then government overreach. We saw things like with the Vietnam War, the creation of the CIA, lack in trust for government went down. We started to see people abuses come out. We saw social movements that upset a lot of Christians, like the sexual revolution, rise of pornography, rise of pro-choice ideas. Christians were like, all right, back away. Maybe we went too far. We're moving back into conservatism. And when you have an American history of like revolution and libertarian ideas early on, it's not hard for Americans to latch back onto those ideas and move in that direction. Like, it's not like this was like fully evil, funded by evil corporations. I mean, there was good reasons. I mean, there were reasons a lot of these ideas resonated with a lot of Christians 50 some years ago.
Yeah. I don't have much to say on like this last point, just because I have things I could say, but I'm not as well read on this topic. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that like oil companies would not have been happy about this, but like there's a lot more factors at play here. It's not like these gullible Christians were just duped by oil companies. There was a lot more happening.
Yeah.
In the 1940s, these wealthy guys created Spiritual Mobilization, an organization which would try to convince Christian ministers everywhere that these social policies were literally evil and non-Christian. Pastor Fifield acted as their mouthpiece.
And he preaches a message that they like to hear, which is that the New Deal is evil. It is a form, he says, of pagan statism. And instead, what we need is a return to, again, this kind of unfettered free enterprise. He links Christianity and capitalism. He sees that they're deeply intertwined. In his view, both are systems that stress individualism above all else. So as he tells it, Christianity is a system in which if you're good, you go to heaven. If you're bad, you go to hell. Capitalism is the same way, he says. If you're good, you make a profit. If you're bad, you go to the poorhouse. And any system that interferes with that divinely prescribed order of things, he says, is a form of pagan statism and is itself evil.
With literally hundreds of big companies, especially oil companies, funding Spiritual Mobilization, it took off. By the 1950s, it had trained tens of thousands of Christian ministers to preach that libertarian capitalism was a part of Christianity itself. This strongly influenced the message of Billy Graham. It became an integral part of American anti-communism, and even inspired the Eisenhower administration to put "under God" into the Pledge of Allegiance, "In God We Trust" onto our money, and make "In God We Trust" the official motto of the United States.
So again, this is just an oversimplification. There was a lot more going on. Churches were being attacked, the sexual revolution, as I mentioned, a lot more issues were at play here that caused Christians to move more into the conservative ideas. Again, Roe v. Wade and the rise of the pro-choice movement did upset a lot of Christians. Like, there's a lot more at play here. It's not this idea this was all And I also have a question. Is Drew actually like anti-capitalist? Like
I don't know.
I'm not going to apologize. Capitalism is a good thing. We see every time a country goes into socialism or communism, it fails. Fascism, they always result in problems. The best economic system we have seen throughout human history is capitalism. And there are researchers that have argued that it does come out of the Christian worldview. Rodney Stark, in his book, The Triumph of Christianity, argues that capitalism was being developed through the medieval era, coming out of the Christian worldview. Toby E. Huff, in the book, The Rise of Early Modern Science, makes the case that a lot of capitalist ideas were coming out of medieval Europe. There was actually a lot. I have a video. I'm going to slightly touch on that a little bit in some upcoming videos. But I mean, there's a lot of interesting research on this. Like, is capitalism bad now? Like, what happened? Like, why would we want to do that? Like, it's actually been a really good system for lifting people out of poverty, because generally at its core, capitalism is just the idea. All right, humans are naturally competitive. What do? Well, we make them compete to earn customers by creating better goods and services and fighting with others who are making other similar goods and services. Like, you're harnessing human competitiveness. This is what Adam Smith talks about, to make better goods and services for the common man. Like, and the problem is then when it's hijacked by like corporations, trade, what is the thing, like oligopolies, for example, or like cartels, and they limit that competition. Like, I don't understand why capitalism is bad. Sure, I don't think it should be linked to Christianity, but if a society is putting out capitalism, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
I don't understand the argument here and what he's trying to do. It's very weird. Aaron says, you can refer to the Nashville trans shooter at a Christian school and other similar examples to make a case against LGBT if you use Drew's logic. Yeah, it's a good point. What about the trans shooters that have shot up the Christian schools? Does that mean trans ideology leads to a shooting? Using Drew's logic, we'd have to say that. Are there any humans in 2TJ thought who were considered to be sinless? Interesting to think about how the belief in Jesus' sinlessness arose.
2GTJ.
I don't know what 2TJ is. But Jesus' sinlessness comes from the New Testament. It says it right there. That he who knew no sin talks about Jesus' sin. Paul talks about it, for example. I'm kind of new here, but have either of you met Nabil Quresh in person? Knew him? Also, this is late, but happy end of humility month. Thank you. I never met Nabil Quresh. No, unfortunately, I did not. No. Taylor says, thank you for all you do. We appreciate it. Thank you for the super chat. The Bible doesn't say you should go streaking across town while waving nunchucks at old people. So the Bible obviously condones it. You see? Yes, yeah. that is Muslim. That's Muslim logic. If it doesn't say it directly, it therefore is okay with it. Muslims need this giant collection called the Sunnah to try to cover every aspect of life, because if Muhammad didn't say it or Allah didn't say it, therefore it's allowed. Joseph says a black woman convinced Reagan to take a pro-life position. Calling him racist is a stretch. It definitely is a stretch. I'd like to see actual evidence that he is. Like, where's the actual evidence?
Is that true about how he got convinced?
I don't know, but I would like to see actual evidence. Drew just asserted he's a racist. I'd like to see where he's getting that from. But the Bible teaches communism in Acts. You see? Yes. That's why also in Acts, Paul takes up a collection to fund them from people that are out earning money in different churches. Like, clearly they prescribe the Jerusalem church model to all the churches. Oh, wait, no, they don't. That's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get the joke. All right, let's get back to Drew here, and then we'll get to some more super chats. So start putting them in again, and we will go through them.
Christianity has always had a strong presence in the United States, but that presence used to look pretty different. The economically conservative, anti-communist majority we see today didn't even exist until it was manufactured by the ultra-wealthy so that they could pay less in taxes and exploit more workers. American Christian theology on politics and economics today was not shaped by Christ-like charity and grace. but by truly psychopathic levels of manipulation and greed. If you're interested, I have a full video on this, which goes into greater detail. All of this is based on the work of historian Kevin M. Cruz and his book, How Corporate America Created Christian America.
I'm reading through that book, by the way.
How is it? Amazing. The greatest book ever.
It's very frustrating to listen to read through.
I mean,
let's just ignore the fact that, you know, like, Catholics for a very, very, very long time have had a whole entire aspect of study about social politics and politics in general. But no, forget about that. You know, let's not talk about that, even though Catholics make up a huge portion of American Christianity. Like,
and by the way, like, this idea that, like, Drew is painting that, like, this is all, like, the modern Christian movement is a sociopathic, nut job base, obsessed with wealth. Again, go back to my debate with Lawrence Krauss. Here are slides from that debate. Who's doing all the religious giving and donating to charities and volunteering? Systematic review shows it's Christians. That 77 studies reveal that religion, measured as group affiliation, values, beliefs, the importance of faith to believer, as well as religious service attendance, private prayer, most often positively relates with giving to outgroups and secular organizations. Frequent church going leads to more volunteer work. But when nations secularize, we see declining levels of volunteering. So the more secularization, the more selfish people get and the less volunteering. Okay. Childhood religiosity, that if it continues on into adulthood, leads to more giving. Numerous studies, again, pointing to all the studies on missionary activity, shows this. Okay. And a cross-national investigation of 126 countries, religiosity was correlated with the likelihood of helping a stranger. Notably, people within countries with greater religious diversity and members of minority religion were even more likely to help a stranger. Additionally, an analysis of data from the World Values Survey, with a total of over 10,000 respondents from 31 countries, reveals that voluntary action with cultural, political, and social organization was greater for those who attended religious service frequently. As I talked about in my video, How Christianity Changed the World, we see that missionary activity led to more education, literacy, hospitals, hygiene habits, health, nutrition, medical care, economic progress, freedom, democratic values, human rights, etc., etc., etc. You can see that video, How Christianity Changed the World. Even Phil Zuckerman admits that religiosity leads to so many good factors. Like Phil Zuckerman, the advocate for secularism, admits that we see a lot of good effects coming from religiosity. Like here's what I was saying at the beginning of the stream. American Christianity has its problems, but we're still doing some good work. Are we perfect? No. Do we have a lot of sins? Yes. Do we have a lot of room for growth? Yes. But still, who's sending out missionaries? The United States sends out an estimate of 127,000 missionaries. That's more than the second and the third combined, which is South Korea and Brazil. The idea that we are this incredibly evil political base because we don't support Drew's politics is absurd. Like, we disagree on politics, but who's still dedicating more time to charity? Who's doing more to help? What is actually decreasing violence and aggression in this country, as we cited earlier research on? It's Christianity. Like, this idea that, we don't vote the way Drew wants us to, so we're part of this organization funded and run by these wealthy billionaires,
power billion people.
Yes, and we're all just filled with these racist people who hate black people and want segregation to come back.
It's a fantasy. Africa.
It's a fantasy Drew has concocted. This is utter nonsense.
Keep going. Sorry.
To be fair, Drew does temper this at the end, which we'll get into. But I want to just point that out for people who don't see all of that.
I found a lot of irony in the last part of that clip, which was what you see today in Christianity is just kind of like the XYZ of a bunch of psychopathic manipulation and blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry, but from where I'm standing, I'm feeling like the narrative that people are spinning against Christian conservatives is actually the result of like psychotic manipulation of narratives and controlling of information.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way about Christianity, and I don't say that because I'm a Christian. Like, I went into this research not thinking that about Drew, and I came out of the research feeling that way about the things Drew was saying. It's just frustrating.
It is. And again, there's a lot of factors that are ignored. There's this oversimplistic picture that's created to make Christianity look bad in America, that it's all this evil stuff. It's all funded by these evil corporations. And like, it's just nonsense. There's so much data that Drew left out. It's almost insulting. Let's get back into this.
Okay, at this point, plenty of Christians watching are probably thinking, everything you discussed here were just the actions of flawed human beings. Christians being sinful doesn't mean Christianity itself is bad. In fact, Christianity can't motivate sinful or harmful behaviors because true Christianity is by definition only good. This very attitude, however, helps make the abuse and corruption I described possible. There's a well-studied psychological phenomenon called moral licensing. It's when the performance of moral behaviors or the perception of oneself as moral actually increases your likelihood of acting immorally. It's when you say, my morals are good, my community is good, and then subconsciously let yourself off the hook for doing immoral things.
Literally every group does that. Literally every group. Like, let's be honest. Atheists have done this too. Secularists have done this too. Also, I appreciate him trying to steelman the Christian response, but that was just not a good attempt. That is not the way we argued in this response.
Yeah.
Dominant social groups like conservative Christians in the United States or Sunni Muslims in Saudi Arabia have more opportunity to have their moral preconceptions praised and reaffirmed constantly than anyone else. At church, in their own media, and in their extremely widespread communities. Christians have their own buildings that they own in every single town in this country. We atheists have 4. Add this.
Okay, but like buy more. Like I don't
I don't know what this has to do with anything. Are we Christians are bad because they own property?
It's true. You see, we should be communists and not have property.
To the fact that many Christians believe that they have direct access to a perfect and infallible moral framework and have a perfect moral entity helping guide their actions, and you get the perfect recipe for moral licensing. In this way, Christianity, particularly when it's the dominant religion in any given place, can actually motivate sinful or harmful behaviors. If you refuse to acknowledge this, I'm sorry to say you're part of the problem. What if, as a Christian, you do acknowledge that Christianity can be or has been used to harm people, though? Should you leave the faith?
Notice the equivocation we just saw there. Christianity can be used to motivate bad behavior. Motivate bad behavior. Therefore, it's like it actually is. Like, let's go back and play that again. I'm just gonna go back, just hear the 2 sentences again.
The dominant religion in any given place can actually motivate sinful or harmful behaviors.
Christianity can motivate sinful and harmful behavior.
If you refuse to acknowledge this, I'm sorry to say you're part of the problem. What if, as a Christian, you do acknowledge that Christianity can be or has been used to harm people, though?
Notice the equivocation.
Yeah.
Christianity is the motivator, but then he equivocates on the next statement. It has been used.
Yeah.
There's a difference here. Is Christianity actually causing the problems, or is it just being used by evil people to do bad things? No one's going to acknowledge the latter. No one's going to deny the latter.
Yeah.
But that's not the same as showing that Christianity is actually the motivator of bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
What you need is actual studies for that. And we've thrown a bunch out tonight that shows that actually, no, that it's hard to make that case. It seems that Christianity is actually a strong force for good. And when it's associated with bad things, that's just evil people misusing it, or it's coming from other variables. Like, we need justification for what Drew said.
Yeah.
Should you leave the faith? if only to subtract from the social power that bad people within Christianity enjoy? Honestly, no, not necessarily. I mean, I don't call myself a Christian in part for that reason, but I don't think everyone has to do that. My friend Justin Sledge from the channel Esoterica once said something related to this, which has stuck with me.
If you want to combat the more extreme versions of religion, being within the religion and making an argument on their terms, that they don't have the monopoly on what is legitimate for that religion, is going to be a far more effective strategy than throwing stones from the outside. I guarantee you all day, every day. Liberal Catholics telling Orthodox Jews they're wrong. You know what Orthodox Jews are going to say?
Just real quick, look how young Drew looks in this. Wow.
How old is he?
I don't know. He looks so much younger, though, man. I don't know how long ago this was. Young Drew looks so innocent and pure.
Vibrant.
I don't give a F.
Yeah.
But when other Jews come to the table and say, yeah, like the way you interpret that halacha, that Jewish legal ruling, in a very conservative way, isn't actually grounded in the tradition, and you're only doing that as a response to modernity, now they have to play ball, right? Now you get to hold their feet to the fire.
You might be able to fight Christian corruption and violence from the inside and be more effective in doing so.
That's right, all atheists.
Become
You must
Christians.
become Christian. You've heard it. You heard it from Drew here.
Do the thing that Christians have been historically doing in general, which is fighting corruption, both externally and internally. But this time, if you want to do it, you should become a Christian.
Christianity is based.
Christianity is based, guys. Remember that.
Thank you, Alex McConnor.
Christianity is based. Christianity.
Yeah, so just remember that, guys. You guys want to... This is actually a point John Lennox made. Like, you know, if you think Christianity is bad, become a Christian and then show us how to do it properly. But I mean, like, here's what I say to a lot of these atheists. Like, this is actually a really, really good point Drew is making. Like you think Christianity is bad and evil and doing all these horrible things. Well, if you really want to change it, there's an easy way to do it. Like, that's what you got to do. Like, throwing stones from the outside is actually not going to help.
Dorothy Day and Martin Luther King Jr. both fought from the inside, and I can't argue that they would have done more good as non-Christians. They were constantly called non-believers or anti-Christian, but their insistence that they were in fact Christians while fighting Christian abuse did stir some positive change within Christian culture.
Yep, and that's happened throughout Christian history. This is Tom Holland's point in Dominion, is that Christianity is like a city on a fault line. Powers come in and they abuse it, they start corrupting it, but Christianity has built-in mechanisms, the fault line, that shake things up every few centuries or so to weed out the abuses, to prevent that stuff kind of going. Yeah, there are aspects of Christendom that have been very harmful, but also it's the principles and the ideas in Christianity that lead to reforms and corrections.
Yep.
It's what makes Christianity such a good force for good. It's as you said, it's self-correcting.
Some people followed their example. As you might have guessed already, I don't think the religious labels we do or don't take on are just a matter of cold intellectualism. I kept this video focused on social and moral issues because I think those are more influential on religious identity. It's perfectly valid and more intellectually honest to take an intentional look at what being a Christian means in your social context and how it affects your moral behavior to decide your religious affiliation. I don't actually want you to leave Christianity. My goal with this video and with my content more generally is to help people take more informed and thoughtful stances on religious issues. Hopefully, these uncomfortable facts helped you do that.
No, because a lot of your uncomfortable facts were not based on all the facts.
Uncomfortable facts made me uncomfortable about how history is being manipulated.
Yeah. Listen, no one is saying Christianity is perfect. Christians are perfect. But like, if you're going to attack it, at least get your facts right. Don't cherry pick the data, which we clearly saw here. And Fan did an excellent job tracking down a lot of that stuff. So yeah, man, I'm sick and tired of these narratives being painted.
It was very irritating to wade through all that research. I'm just saying.
I believe it. I believe it. I mean, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like this idea that it's all the current Christian movement is all evil because it votes Republican primarily is not based in
I feel
reality.
like-
At the end,
keep
at
going.
the end, oh yeah, I was gonna say at the end of the day, even if like these evil corporations tried to hijack and make more people Republican by pulling on their heartstrings with regards to the pro-life movement, the reason why that did work is because there was a lot of people who don't want babies to be killed. Like that's the motivation to be pro-life. And if you go to churches and you talk to Christians every election, I hear this all the time. Hey, who are you voting for? Oh, I don't know. I'm probably just, I hate both candidates, but I'll just vote pro-life. The guy who thinks he's going to do, because that's the driving issue for a lot of American churches right now. Stop killing babies. Like if you're going to get mad at Christians for thinking that way, that we're somehow evil, you've got a warped view of reality. The pro-life issue is going to be huge for Christians today. The anti-pornography issue is going to be a huge issue. The anti-mutilating children under the guise of gender-affirming surgery is going to be a huge issue for Christians today. It's not the idea that we just that's constantly being painted by atheists, or I don't know if he calls himself an agnostic or whatever, but people like Drew saying, well, you just hate black people. No. We don't want babies to be killed. We don't want kids to be mutilated. And yes, actually, if you look at the studies they did on volunteering and charitable giving, we don't just want babies to be born. There's a lot of that money going to pro-life organizations that help mothers care for their children that instead of getting an abortion. I remember helping an organization in Pennsylvania, the Resource Center. That was their whole thing. Don't have an abortion, have your kid. We will help you raise the kid. We will give you diapers and clothing and food and resources. Like that's what it was all about. In churches, we're donating. I was volunteering time, helping them make videos at the time because this was an important thing that needed to be done. So when you look at all the data, no, it's not this idea that we're these evil people. Like we have our problems, but at least get the facts right at the end of the day.
100%.
100%, as Stan said. Okay, ran over. Let's get to super chats here. So put them in now. We should do a plug. Let's do a plug here before we forget that we need to do a plug. We donate. Stan, do the donation plug, and I'll put up.
Oh, yeah. Let me pull up the.
I got the link.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So if you're a supporter, by the way, you may have gotten a newsletter about this, but I think we're about 60% of the way to having me kind of being at the fully funded mark. So super excited about that because, again, by the way, like Mike and I decided to do this. This was on Friday? Was it on Friday we decided to do this? Friday night?
Yeah, we decided to do this stream Friday night.
Like this was 2 days of research that on my end that I just was able to bring out. Now just imagine if I can dedicate all of my energy into this at all times. Mike and I will be awesome. So please consider becoming a donor through the website. Everything helps. Again, like once I'm fully funded, Mike and I think you would echo this. Like we have plans for going beyond this. Like we want to be able to fund real research, not just between you and I, but like other people. And your videos go to help making an actual difference. Like now there's people out there that hear these arguments about colonialism and racism and all this other stuff in Christianity. And it's like, they typically don't go unchallenged, and you're helping make a part of a change there. So yeah, just please consider becoming a supporter, and then you'll be able to access the Discord server through there and everything as well. What other perks are in the works right now? I'm not really sure.
So we're going to be, so you get early access to all the videos coming out. So right now, currently, if you sign up to donate, you'll get access to our current video, How Christianity Saved Children. And we're going to be looking at a lot of the general beliefs in the ancient pagan culture, which was all for infanticide, especially for females, how Christians created orphanages to help them, ended a lot of Christians being thrown into brothels. It's not going to be a black and white video. A lot of the neo-pagans on X were complaining, but we're gonna point out, yes, Christians were not perfect, and pagans were also not pure evil. But we're going to cover a lot of the research on how Christianity progressed society, made it much better, helped advance care for children, giving them value in a lot of ways that was lacking in the wider pagan cultures of the time. So yeah, you'll get early access to that video and all future videos. And we're going to try to do some private Q&A donors in the future. I've not had time to do them from a lot of other things, but I'm going to try to do one in September. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
September would be good. That's when things will slow down for me a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, sign up to donate. We still need support. Keep doing this kind of stuff and fighting the Muslim fronts and the atheist fronts. But we're going to keep trucking along, I guess. Kenton Park says Drew's argument sounds like Candace Owens' anti-Jewish conspiracies. Quote mine from vague, questionable sources. Read parallels into them. Rose from emotional politics. Therefore, Christians, Jews bad. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
I'm not familiar with what Candace Owens says, but
I can't. Oh my! The nonsense that comes.
Do I not want to get into it? No, I'm gonna save myself the pain of listening to this right now. Maybe in the future I'll look at
Insanity. How can you be a partial preterist but believe Revelation was written after 70 AD? Well, you just say that Revelation is you take an idealistic interpretation of Revelation. If you want to do that dating thing, I don't think you have to, but like if you're going to say, like, for example, like Revelation is more just about it's an idealistic interpretation, and it's a constant fight between good and evil. Like you can take a preterist view of Revelation, a futurist view of reading, an idealistic view, or a historical view, or I don't think it's like historism or something like that. Like you think it's like Revelation is about like the unfolding of history over the past 2,000 years. If you're a partial preterist but you do believe Revelation was written after 70 AD, you take a partial preterist view of the Olivet Discourse, but you'll take an idealistic reading of Revelation. That's what I'd say. Second Temple Judaism. I see. Okay. But you should have been. It should have been STJ. I would have been fine. Whatever.
I mean, Mike, I showed you some of it a little bit already. Like, because I'm working on a script talking about the two power stuff, and I actually dig into Dead Sea Scroll material in that video, in that script that I'm working on. Mike, I showed you one thing. People on the Discord server, I showed you just one of the things. It has to do with Melchizedek and everything. So there is precedent for some of this. It's just I'm not going to say anything else because you're going to have to wait for that video to come out sometime in the future.
He doesn't want to say because
you're hiding, boy. You're hiding, and you know you can't come out and show your face.
Yes, we know what you're really doing. You're hiding. You're afraid to bring it up.
I am.
You need to debate Drew into the ground. He does not do debates. We've already tried. We have tried to get him to do a debate, but no, he doesn't want to do them. So,
Drew, I would do a written debate, or maybe like a video back and forth, kind of like what Cameron and what's his face did. Like, I would do something like that if you don't want to do like an actual one, but written or video back and forth. I'm down. I'm cool.
Yeah, I'd be down to do that too. Yeah, for sure. Secular, humanist, and atheist organizations barely got charity, and most go for like atheist messaging and staff, and they say we Christians do indoctrination and colonialism. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the stats on that, but interesting.
Yeah, I'd like to see his stats.
Bathan. Thoughts on binitarianism, Father and Son or God, Holy Spirit is the Father's power, Spirit, and the implications of it on salvation and spirituality.
I think people that are committed binitarians, I know two people that are like that, like personally. They're I think personally speaking, they're just trying to do the best they can with the text, and I just think they have some misguided interpretations. Do I think they're saved and stuff like that? If that is that the question, or
yeah, I would say they're outside of the body of Christ. We don't make salvific claims regarding this kind of stuff. We're not in the position to do that, but we cannot say they're part of the church because they deny a core doctrine. But that does not mean no salvation necessarily.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's very clear in places like Acts, the Holy Spirit speaks, like calling Paul and Barnabas to be set apart. This is a person. Jesus talks about him as a person in the farewell discourse in John, for example. This is not a force. This is clearly another person of God. It's hard to get around that. How can Than be looking this good? Damn, he's hitting on you again.
Stop it.
Well, thanks for coming, everyone. I'm sorry I had to do that. And dang it. You know, I was just talking to an atheist today, and he's like, "You guys never make gay jokes on your streams." I'm like, "What,
bro?
What?" Yeah, I don't think it's absurd. You guys are too uptight. You never make gay jokes. Okay, sure.
Mike, do you
all
want
right.
this? Romans 16.
There we go. I'm out. He's out again.
I was quoting scripture and you kicked me off. Romans, you see? Mike hates the Bible.
All right, I'm ending the stream now. We're gonna end this. We're gonna move on with our lives and never talk about this again. All of us, all of you watching too. So thanks for coming, everyone. Again, I'll be live on the channel Wednesday, 4 p.m. Central, which is 5 Eastern, with Dan Wallace, one of my favorite New Testament scholars.
Tell him I say hi. If he
I won't.
remembers me.
No, he won't. I sent him a picture of him and me taking a picture together. He didn't even remember who I was.
I enjoyed. Never mind. I enjoyed some quality time with him way back in the day.
Good. Okay, well, I'll mention it, but we'll see what he says. All right. So yeah, we'll be live again 2 days, and then we'll be live on Thursday with William Lane Craig, and then next week we have Thomas Schmidt on, and then we'll be responding to Muslims at some point, because that was an hilarious reply on cousin marriages. God, it was bad. So yeah, some good things coming out, and we'll see you guys next time.
You made it to the end of this video, which means this message matters to you. If you want to see more content like this reaching people for Christ, you can help make it happen. Your support makes these videos possible. Click the link below and donate today. And if you want to go even deeper, consider joining our Patreon community. You'll get early access to videos, behind-the-scenes content, and a place to connect with others passionate about this mission.